You are watching the Fayetteville Government Channel. Up next, full coverage of the latest meeting of the Environmental Action Committee. The Environmental Action Committee is composed of citizen volunteers and meets on the third Monday of each month. The committee advises the City Council regarding environmental issues facing the City of Fayetteville and its residents. And now, the Environmental Action Committee.
It's 5:30, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. This is the July 15th Environmental Action Committee meeting. I'm Sarah Marsh. I represent the citizens of Ward 1 on the Fayetteville City Council and chair this committee. Let's start by doing some introductions.
I'm Richard Russell. I have a degree in geology and I've lived here 50 years.
Mike Emery. I work at the county animal shelter doing media and admin. Live in Ward 4.
I'm Joe Kiklak. I live in Ward 4 and I'm studying political science and philosophy at the U of A right now.
James Barton. I'm a veterinarian and I live in Northeast Fayetteville.
Terry Lane. I live in Ward 3 and I work with the Northwest Arkansas Land Trust.
And Connie Crisp, and I live in the Mount Sequoia area.
I'm Dana Smith. I'm a member at large on the committee and also the Sustainability Coordinator for Fayetteville Public Schools.
And I'm Peter Niergarten, City of Fayetteville, Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning. Also a Fayetteville resident in Ward 2 near Wilson Park.
Great, thank you. Do we have a quorum, Peter? Looks like we do. But
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, we're in excellent shape.
great.
Good news.
All right, well, let's get started with the trails and bikeway guides. And I believe Peter just passed out the new trail guide. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, so these are pretty much hot off the press. We got them last week. And I have extra copies down here for anyone in the audience or anyone who didn't get one. But essentially, this was a collaboration between the City of Fayetteville and Advertising and Promotions, Marilyn Hefner, and they paid for the publication of the bike route map, and city staff basically put the whole map together, the layout, identified the routes, really worked hard on making it user-friendly and easy to read. I got to give a lot of the credit to our GIS department. They have some really awesome mapping skills, and they really work their butts off making it look really, really nice. And so the idea with the guide is that it identifies the trails, which are kind of the spine, the backbone of the Fayetteville cycling and recreation system. And then we attempted to identify 3 different levels of on-street bicycle routes that have different comfort levels associated with them. So there's super comfortable streets that are green, and those that are denoted with sharrows and bike signage are green with little black dots along them. So those are actually signed or denoted in some way. Here you go, Aubrey. Then there's the streets that we call, I don't actually have a copy in front of me,
Okay.
but moderate, so they're a little bit less comfortable. They might be a little higher traffic and still have a bicycle lane, or they just might be a little narrower, a few more cars. And then there's what we identified as the difficult routes, and those were the routes that you probably don't want to cycle on unless you're really, really comfortable biking in heavy traffic and dealing with cars. But we identified them because they were sort of critical pieces to get you somewhere else. And so we kind of felt obligated to show a few of those on there. So I'm really pleased with the way it turned out.
Very nice.
We've got really positive feedback on them so far, and they are available for free. We have them down in the Development Services Building. Advertising and Promotions has them, and as I understand it, they're distributing them to many of the bicycle shops and other businesses in town that cater to bicycles. So, anybody's got any questions about it?
That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
It'll be updated. The plan is once a year, so as we add more facilities, it'll continue to be updated. For example, we didn't show the the extension of Frisco Trail down to Walker Park yet, because it's not actually built yet. But when it does get built later on this year, then it'll be on the map for next year.
Well, if I may, I'm very pleased to see Pinnacle Prairie Trail named for the first time on there.
Oh, yeah. Just a short little stub, but it's on there.
Yeah, it's a very pristine piece of nature out there.
Great, great. Any further questions or comments on the bike trails map?
I just wanted to say thanks to the staff for including the schools on here. I know in an earlier version I saw it didn't have that, and we talked about it, and I think it's a good thing to help families start thinking about how they can ride their bikes to school as well. So
Yeah, that was a great catch.
Looks great.
And definitely a must-have for any bicycle map, I agree.
Okay, well, moving on. Complete neighborhood plans.
Well, I had a little trouble with my audio-visual here, but the last meeting,
Peter, is that your mouse?
it's not, I don't think the mouse is the issue, it's just not seeing the computer projector. But I can just tell you about it. How does that sound?
Yeah, that
The
sounds
last
good.
meeting, we were discussing the Enduring Green Network and ideas for helping developers and property owners recognize where it is earlier on in their decision-making process when they're proposing a development. And we strayed a little bit to the complete neighborhood plans and getting those out in front of developers as well. And with the same ideas, try to influence some of that development work as early in the decision-making process as possible. So I went back to the planning department and I talked with them about that. On the city's website, and I can send you all the link after this meeting, we have GIS, which has links to our zoning map, which shows the current zoning of all the land within the city of Fayetteville boundaries. And so on that zoning map, which is typically the place if you were interested in purchasing a piece of property or finding out what your property is zoned, that's where you would go to get that information. On that zoning map, we've denoted the 4 complete neighborhood plans, complete neighborhood master planning areas that the city has done since 2004. The downtown area, Walker Park, Fayette Junction, and Weddington Corridor. And so you can go on that zoning map and you can click on that boundary that I would show you if my computer would cooperate. And it brings up a little box that tells you just a little blurb about the complete neighborhood plan, but then has the link to the website that has all the information on the complete neighborhood plan. So everything takes you right to that Fayette Junction website, which has the vision and goals document, the illustrative master plan, everything that we have online related to each of those complete neighborhood plans now is linked to our zoning map. So
Excellent.
it was relatively easy to do, and I thought it was something that made sense, and everybody planning seemed to agree with it. So thank you guys for giving me that idea, and just to give you a piece of feedback, we got it implemented. So I was just happy to report that to you all.
Great work.
I got a question. The use of the term complete, I'm a little bit, I don't quite grasp the use of that term, complete.
So I use that kind of interchangeably with the phrase neighborhood master plan, and it essentially just denotes, I guess, that it is a completed neighborhood. It's a planning area that we have completed a neighborhood plan for. Not that it is what others might call a complete neighborhood, like a 20-minute neighborhood that has all your destinations within a 20-minute walk from a given location in it. So that I apologize if that's confusing for that reason, but it really means it's a neighborhood master plan area where we completed one of these master plans with the whole community charrette and all that.
So for me to process it, I'm wondering, will there be more neighborhoods defined as time goes on?
Yeah, every 2 years as part of City Plan 2020, 2025, 2030, part of the the action plan, implementation plan steps for each of those citywide plans is to do a neighborhood plan every 2 years. And so that may or may not follow, the boundaries of what we call, for example, the Washington Willow neighborhood or the Wilson Park neighborhood or any other neighborhood. But it simply denotes an area that we have done one of these, completed one of these plans for.
And so you have X number of puzzle parts this year.
Right.
Eventually it'll be all the space.
That's
Yep.
the idea.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's good sense.
Mhm.
And right now, we're currently working on the Tyson's Corner master
Mhm.
plan. So,
And that'll be a little different just
Yeah,
because it's
that's-
property that only we own. I mean, typically
Mhm.
with these neighborhood plans, we don't own, we really only own the right of way within those neighborhood plans.
Can I ask you a question, Peter?
Yeah.
So these neighborhood master plans are kind of the ideal, what we would like it to look like, right? Or how we would like it to be. I guess my question is, so when a developer is interested in developing X, what are the steps exactly, and at what point are they made aware that what they're doing may or may not jive with the master plan?
So the master plan is a, we always try to caution folks, it's not necessarily the blueprint for what the neighborhood will look like. It's simply one option for what it could look like.
Okay.
And that what's drawn is one option. Really what's most, in our minds, most important are those guiding principles that go along with it. So for example, with the Weddington Corridor Plan, one of our guiding principles was the heart of the neighborhood at the intersection of Weddington and Rupel Road. Another one was active transportation and public transportation options within the neighborhood. There are others as well. And in my mind, what's drawn is maybe more of a, this is what could be, and could provide ideas and help influence a developer's, any developer is going to have several different renditions of what they want their site plan to look like as they go through the process of developing that, and we're hopeful that this will help influence that decision-making process.
So when are they, do they just know about the master plan, or are they, is there, when in the process are they shown, or they just already know about it?
Well, that's the problem, is there is no, there's no, formal,
Point in the process.
point in the process that requires review of this plan. Typically, if there's a rezoning request, or if there's some difficult decisions at the planning commission level or the city council level, staff will refer back to the master plan when talking about whether or not this particular development either does or does not match with the vision for the neighborhood in either recommending it for or against a particular project. So it helps guide staff recommendations, but we're hopeful that we can be a little more proactive rather than reactive by getting out in front of developers.
Well, and I think as someone who's worked in the design and construction industry, when I am presented with a new design project, the first step is always to research. You want to find the zoning. You'll always go to the city website, and so that's why this link is there now. So that then you would see that and you'd be like, okay, oh, this is in the hillside or development ordinance, or look, what is this master plan?
That pops up,
And it's going to pop up now,
Okay.
right? That's
Yeah.
the link is going to pop up, so that
Yeah.
will come forward.
The boundary is on the zoning map, and if you click on anywhere on the perimeter of the boundary or inside the boundary, then that web link comes up for you.
Excellent.
So, and the boundary is denoted in the legend to say this is the neighborhood master plan area. There's 4 of them.
And then when these do come to council, if they want more density or something, they'll always say, oh, well, this is consistent with the 2030 plan, or this is consistent with the Weddington plan or not, and that helps the council know if that's a good fit or not for the neighborhood.
And the green infrastructure map is part of that or not? I think we talked about that before and I don't remember.
Yeah, I still haven't cracked that nut.
Okay.
Still working on that one. This neighborhood plan was a little bit easier.
Okay.
it isn't really appropriate to show on the zoning map because it's kind of a zoning and the neighborhood plans are sort of different kinds of apples, and the green infrastructure is really more an orange that goes. There's several other maps that are on that menu of maps on the city's GIS website, and I think one of those might be more appropriate. And I'm going to continue working with GIS to see if we can't figure that out.
Well, I mean, could it not be something with the same boundary where it just says that this property is located in the Enduring Green Network with a link to what that means? And it may be non-binding, but just as an alert.
Yeah, on the big maps that we have published, we show the Enduring Green Network on the future land use plan and not the current land use plan. But I don't think it is on the digital version of the future land use plan. I have to double check that.
I don't think it is.
Yeah. So that, to me, is likely where it would wind up at.
Okay, to add to that, because I'm trying to understand this too. So these neighborhood master plans are not, a builder doesn't have to look at those. Is that right?
Right.
He does not have to look at them. Where he might come in trouble by not looking at them is if he's trying to do something that's not part of the city regulations. Is that, I mean, I'm not sure. Some builders will do that and some won't. It's like,
So if we want to grow in that direction, then how do we?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not
That's what
seeing
I'm
any
kind of-
teeth in that at all.
There's not many teeth in it. Really, right now, if it's not something that's a use by right, and then they need to come back to the council or the planning commission and get a variance or some kind of a change, then we can take that into consideration as to whether or not to grant that. But no, there's no teeth in it right now.
Okay. Well, and I want to evolve, and you tell me if this is a good time to do this, or I can wait till the end of the meeting. Sometimes when I'm with a large gathering, and I might just say, I'm going to an environmental action committee meeting. Anybody got anything besides just gripes? Anything that you're concerned about? And what, I've got my list. I haven't had my iPad. But anyway, and what I'm seeing, and I don't have any answers for this at all, is twofold. One is a lot of the apartments that are going up. There seems to be a lot of concern about that among citizens. And these are not necessarily people that are close friends or anything. This is just something that's a concern. It's like, where did that come from? Or how did that get here? And is there a height limit? They also talked about sprawl and how they're very grateful that there's no sprawl, but because there's no sprawl, are we getting too high and nobody can see around anything else? Again, these are questions from various citizens, and I don't know if that fits in with this or not, but it seems like, I didn't know how to answer any of that. I said, and I'm not sure where even to tell them to go as far as that goes, but I can understand the concern. Mm-hmm. And the second one was the diesel, the leaking of diesel fuel in the apartment complex, the view. Is that something that's going to be damaging to our environment? That was another question asked. So there you have it on the table, whether you wanted it or not. But, it did seem to kind of fit in. Oh, and the third thing was, and this was a big thank you from some people about the new recycling center. They were very grateful for that. So anyway. So you can tell me where you'd like to put those things in, but they were just from various citizens. Some I knew, some I didn't. Just happened to be at a gathering where I had
I think some of those concerns could be addressed by, I'm really wanting us to develop some incentives for low-impact development, for energy efficiency, and to help us manage our growth and encourage more responsible development. So that's on my list of things to work on in this group. I'm hoping to get your input.
I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
What, at our last
This is the last
meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we discussed that a little bit at one of our staff meetings. I mentioned this group's desire to try to develop a more, maybe it's an a la carte menu of incentives. Not really sure what those are yet, but I'm hopeful that, we can move toward that. Encourage what we want instead of trying to use sticks to fend off what we don't want.
Well, if we have citizens who are concerned about certain issues, I think that's a way this committee could go. I mean, at least to be knowledgeable enough to know where to tell them to go, or if we have the answers or whatever. So I'd like to see more of us getting with the citizens and seeing what's going on with them, too.
Well, and then on the fuel spill at the View Apartments, that is really outside of what the city can, we really can't do much about it, but apparently it did not reach the creek. Arkansas Development, or ADEQ has been notified, they did investigate, and I think they fined, is that right, Peter?
Of the one
Oh, they haven't
category,
yet.
first
Okay.
death.
Yeah.
Okay, oh yeah, they
Over
fined
the
the first death, but they're
Safety
investigating.
rules
They're,
that were violated, not about the death. I'm sure that'll be a lawsuit.
Well, that would.
right, so they're on it, but that's, we've kind of done everything that we can do, and I think we've issued 2 stop work orders for safety violations, or I'm sorry, code violations. Safety falls under OSHA, and so we just step in where we can, but a lot of it is not under something that the city can deal with.
I think that many times when you say something like that, it's like, well, then who does do something about it? You know,
Yeah,
it's like if the city
ADEQ.
can't do it.
Yeah. So,
But we can say that it has not really hurt our environment.
Well, if I may,
go
Madam
ahead,
Chairman,
Aubrey.
Aubrey, I want
That
to
was
hear
Yeah.
you.
that piece of land up there and the slopes of it,
Yeah.
this was a pristine, almost pristine. It had things up there before, but and it was eroded. But Theo Witzel of the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, the top botanist in the state, professionally in the state government, he was up there with me 3 different times. In the wintertime primarily. We never saw it in the full glory of summer. But it had an amazing number of things you find on high, dry prairie, and some that you find also in wet prairie. So in combination with World Peace Wetland Prairie, and then the Pinnacle Prairie, and then the top of that mountain, and the other side of that mountain, you had an amazing number of native plants growing. So moving that soil and dredging it out and blasting out deep into the ground the various purposes on that mountain, the environment was pretty badly damaged, and silt has run off that all during the rain that we've had since they started down the stream, town branch of the West Fork of the White River. So I hope they did, as they said, clean up the fuel spill properly, and that's pretty manageable if they did it quickly and so forth, as apparently they did, I guess. But everything that goes on like that is serious damage to the environment. in
I
many
think
different ways.
when somebody reads the diesel, then
It
it
sets
all of
off.
a sudden, it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
if it had just
Yeah.
poured on down the hill into the
Right.
creek, it would have been a lot of living things destroyed.
So it had been contained.
It was
somewhat.
contained and allegedly did not make it into the creek.
According to.
Allegedly, according to,
ADEQ?
I believe it was ADEQ.
Okay.
I think they would like to find them if they could, so I think if they found it in the creek, they would have said, here's a money-making opportunity, let's, so, I tend to lean on the side of, you know, they're an agency that is an environmental protection agency, so those people tend to want to find stuff.
But again, on that particular hill, after all that change that had been done, the chances of it getting into the groundwater, especially the deep sources of groundwater, the springs that come off of that hill in all directions, are not, you know, we can't even tell how much could have, but it also, because of what they've done, there's not much pervious surface for it to go down in there anymore. So maybe it was all on the surface. I hope.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Oh, that's all that I had. on that item.
All right, well, let's move on to the Fayetteville Strategic Energy Plan.
So, in June, was it June? Yeah, it was just last month.
Yes.
Myself, Ms. Marsh, and Ms. Smith here were three of there was about 8 or 9 of us that represented the city of Fayetteville as part of you guys might have to help me with the acronym.
I know it's SESM, I don't know what it stands for.
SESM program.
Energy.
Yeah,
It's,
I can't remember.
Sustainable Energy Scorecard
Something for municipalities.
for municipalities and education for municipalities
Yes.
program. It's a pilot project that the University of Arkansas's Applied Sustainability Center is conducting with 7 cities across the state. So Fayetteville was involved, Harrison, Arkadelphia, North Little Rock, Wynn, Gould, can't forget Little Gould.
Conway?
No, not Conway.
Isn't it Conway?
Cersei.
Cersei.
Cersei was the other one. So 7 cities all came to Fayetteville, and we spent 2 days talking about advanced energy and renewable energy and opportunities for energy efficiency. Yeah, basically all under the purview of advanced energy management. That's kind of what I would call it. At the end of that, we took some tours of the solar lab out at the U of A farm, and we listened to experts from across the state and even at the Department of Energy talk on various subjects. And at the end of the whole event, we had our group, each city got back together, and we developed what each of us called our vision for a strategic energy plan for each community. So I wanted to report back to you guys what we came up with for Fayetteville's strategic energy plan. Quite a bit on there. I'll kind of run through everything, and then I'm going to come back and talk in greater detail on a couple of items. One of the things was city government as a role model for the citizens of Fayetteville. So the city being getting our act together first, and then trying to expect others to step up to the plate and follow us as a leader. More efficient lighting for city parking lots, benchmarking some of our city-owned buildings against standard buildings, solar, potential installation of solar photovoltaics on some city buildings or city parking facilities. This was actually broken into various different areas. That was the city half of the building and lighting component. So for the community half of the building and lighting component, there was a push by a couple of our team members for some more advanced energy disclosure during the real estate transaction of a property. So right now, the city has for all new commercial and residential construction, we have requirements for how efficient a building must be or how efficient a home must be. And for new homes, we put a sticker on a house that essentially tells how efficient it is, comparable to the MPG sticker you'd see on a new automobile. But we don't have anything like that for resale of existing homes. And so this idea is to develop a program that requires some sort of energy rating on a home when it's being sold, not just when it's brand new, because there's a lot of existing homes out there, right? Incentives for green development, promotion and raising the awareness of utility incentives from SWEPCO, Ozarks Electric, and Source Gas, PACE and HEAL, which I'll come back to both of those. And then when we got into the transportation and fuels area, we talked about smarter transportation development, so developing a more robust public transit system, sprawl prevention, Connie, that gets to kind of what you were talking about, and optimization of land use, developing complete neighborhoods, so not only more complete neighborhood plans, but neighborhoods that are walkable and have amenities, jobs, schools, shopping within a 20-minute walk of people's homes. and then more opportunities for active transportation and encouraging employers to adopt a more relaxed dress code to accommodate some of the attire that might be more conducive to walking or bicycling to work in less than ideal weather. So the two I wanted to come back to, HEAL and PACE. HEAL stands for Home Energy Assistance Loan Program, and it's a program of the Clinton Climate Initiative. One of the some representatives from Wynne, Arkansas, Martha J. Murray is her name, actually works for the Clinton Climate Initiative, and she's the program manager for their HEAL program. And the way HEAL works is the Clinton Climate Initiative will work with an employer to develop a program that will allow an employer to either loan money to their employees or work with a bank to develop a loan process to loan money to employees so that they can do weatherization or energy efficiency improvements to their home. And then the reason the employer gets involved is because the way that loan is repaid is through a payroll deduction. So it's a very guaranteed way of getting repaid. Thus, a lot of times the interest rate can be reduced as part of that loan. So there's a pilot project that was done here in Northwest Arkansas with the
L'Oreal.
that was done in Central
okay.
Arkansas.
That's right.
The one here was done with UAMS
Okay.
and the UARC Credit Union. I have a conference call set up for Friday with the Chief of Staff and our Finance Director to talk about getting the City of Fayetteville as an employer looking at offering HEAL as a incentive to our employees. And so that's the whole way that this project is sold. It's offered as an employee incentive. You can list it with your various benefits like 401k, health insurance, dental, home assistance, energy loan program. So it's a really exciting program that has a lot of traction. The City of Little Rock is doing it. L'Oreal has done it down in Central Arkansas and some others.
Do you know what response employers have had? I mean, like have they had a lot of employees apply or want to do it, or?
L'Oreal had really good response, and Martha J. Murray, who works for the Clinton Climate Initiative, she actually piloted the project with a shoe factory that her and her husband own in Wynne, Arkansas, and they had a really positive response to it. And I'm not sure about the City of Little Rock, what theirs has been. I'm going to know more after this Friday.
Yeah, and I think this is really exciting just because we have, our city workforce has, gone with minimal raises or no raises for a long time, and we still have a few people who are earning below market rate. So this is a way that, we can help put some money back in their pockets without directly having to pay them. So it can help bridge that, the economic depression that we've been suffering through, and hopefully encourage energy efficiency at the same time.
And the idea with a lot of these, with this program and PACE that I'll talk about in a minute, is that you structure the loan so that the energy savings associated, or the payment on the loan is less than the, is greater than the energy savings that you receive. Excuse me, no, the other way around. Less than the energy savings. So actually it's net positive. Yeah, you borrowed money to do this, improvement on your home, but actually at the end of the month, you're coming out ahead because you're getting less in your paycheck, but you're spending less on your utility bills.
And that'll continue even after the loan is paid.
And then when the loan's paid off, yeah.
And would you tell me what that stands for again? Home Energy?
Assistance Loan
Thank you.
Program.
It was really interesting to hear from the companies who had done it before, I think, and especially, like Sarah was saying, for people who have a lower income who may not be able to save to make those investments in their house, or feel like they can't make that budgeting. Here's an opportunity to do that in a way that saves them money over time without having to pull a big chunk out. And the interest rates that they talked about were extremely low. I mean, like 1%.
And because it's a payroll tax
That's
or a
nice.
payroll
Yeah.
deduction, then they don't, the credit rating is not necessarily a factor, so it's easier for
Mhm.
someone who may have
Mhm.
spotty credit to go ahead and get this loan.
Mhm.
Interesting.
It's nice.
Cedar, is it pre-tax, like other cafeteria things?
Yes.
Recognized,
Is it?
I think so.
recognized by the IRS as legit in that way?
I think so, I'm not positive.
I'm not 100% sure about that. That's a really good question for my conference call on Friday.
Be a good thing for the U of A to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm having some conversations on PACE with some folks in Michigan, and Martha Jane Murray, the Clinton Climate Initiative, is actually talking with the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, the University of Michigan, and one other employer in Ann Arbor, Michigan, about the HEAL program up there as well. So there may soon be a university in the University of Michigan that's done it as well. So no pressure on the U of A.
Yeah.
It's Clinton.
Yeah.
Should do it.
Yeah, really.
Right. So.
And then did you want to talk about PACE?
Sure. Any other questions on the HEAL
Was it-
component?
Was any thought given to converting of city vehicles to natural gas?
It's been discussed, and what we've actually, a few of our vehicles have been converted to propane, which has some advantages over natural gas because it's less wide, it has less uses, and so the prices actually tend to be lower, and the efficiencies are basically equivalent. So we have a couple of high mileage pickup trucks and some mowers that are operating on propane. So yeah, and then we have a lot of larger diesel vehicles that operate using a mix of biodiesel as well.
It's an interesting question, though. At the workshop that we were at, North Little Rock was there, and they talked about how they have converted their vehicles to compressed natural gas, and they have a compressed natural gas. They do call it a station, I guess.
Mhm.
It still is a gas station that the city utilizes. So they didn't share a whole lot of detail about that, but as an example in Arkansas of that being done, North Little Rock is somewhere to look to.
Pretty old technology that works well. The company I worked for in the 70s, we filled all our cars up with natural gas. There's a predecessor to Verizon, and it's really efficient and less polluting.
Wow.
So the other acronym is PACE. And PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And you may have heard a fair bit about this. The mayor's been a big supporter of it for a couple of years. It was attempted, there was an attempt at passing it in the 2011 Arkansas legislative session. I think it fell about 3 or 4 votes short. 2013, it did finally pass in April, and so Arkansas now has PACE, what's called PACE enabling legislation, or a law that allows municipalities to establish PACE districts. And the way PACE operates is, again, it is a loan for renewable energy, energy efficiency, or weatherization improvements on a real property, so a business or an industrial building. Right now, it's not viable on the residential level, but it is viable on the commercial industrial scale. So what a business owner would do is they would get a weatherization assessment of their building. A certified energy professional would say, okay, if you do this, 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 and this, it would improve your efficiency by so much. Here's how much it'll cost. And that business owner would then come to the PACE district, which would be created by the city, and borrow that money from the PACE district. The PACE district would negotiate a loan with either a bank or could pull several of these projects together and sell a bond to finance these improvements. And the way the property owner repays their loan is through a property tax assessment. So again, it's a very secure way of ensuring repayment, and thus the the borrower is able to get the money at a lower interest rate because the bank sees this guaranteed, once a year property tax assessment as very secure. And so I mentioned Ann Arbor, Michigan earlier. We're looking to them. They have a successful PACE district that was just floated $530,000 worth of loans to 5 different businesses inside Ann Arbor for weatherization improvements. The savings is like $50,000 a year in energy improvements. That money is staying in the local economy of Ann Arbor, not being paid to utility companies. Most of their electricity comes from coal and natural gas, similar to ours. So that money's, a lot of it's leaving the area. And in the process of doing that, they were able to hand work out to a bunch of local contractors to do all these weatherization and energy efficiency improvements on these buildings. So right now, we are working on trying to develop a PACE district for the city of Fayetteville, and it was one of our strategic energy goals that came out of this conference. The mayor's been a big supporter of it, and we're charging forward with trying to get it figured out.
Yes. It's my understanding too that stays with the property.
Yes.
So that
Good
those
point.
people move on, they don't take the payment, they don't take that
Debt.
debt with them, it stays with the property.
Payment stays with the property just as the improvement stays with the property, which
Right, okay.
makes perfect sense because the new owner is going to realize the benefit of that improvement as well.
Good idea.
Yeah, thank you. So that is exciting news.
Yeah.
And the mayor's directed me to move forward with figuring out how to establish a PACE district here for Fayetteville. We're still kind of in the beginning phases, researching what's going on in the communities.
And Peter, there's some discussion of what that PACE district would actually look like, because it could be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it could be at the city level or the county level, potentially,
That is true.
right? Or some other configuration
Yeah,
even.
it could be a state PACE district, it could be county, it could be Fayetteville plus a bunch of other cities. We've heard from the state that the timing is not right for a district at the state level. We've heard the same thing from the county. And so I think at this point, we're basically going to move forward with a city limits of Fayetteville as our district boundary. At least that's the direction we're headed right now.
Would there need to be a new staff I'm assuming there would be some increased administrative costs for either one of these programs, right? For HEAL or PACE?
Yeah, PACE, I think, much more so than
Yeah.
HEAL. I can't answer that question fully yet because we haven't gotten deep enough into the weeds. But it's something that's exciting, and
Yeah.
I'll keep you up to date as we learn more.
For the HEAL program, that was something that they did specify that it doesn't require an additional staff person to handle it, because once it's set up, then it just,
So whoever's doing payroll
right, whoever's doing payroll
does the
initial.
paperwork for the employee's loan. I'm assuming if they ever quit working for you, then you would have to go.
What do you do?
Yeah. But then they kind of track it monthly.
That question's already on my list for
Yeah.
Friday's conference call. 'Cause
Very good, too.
I'm wondering about that.
Yeah.
Any other questions on PACE or HEAL?
I have one other just quick announcement that I wanted to do that I didn't actually put on the agenda. Last Tuesday, we got the electricity connected to a brand-new electric vehicle charging station that is located in the parking lot just across the street over here. Thanks to a generous contribution from Ozarks Electric, who actually paid for the electric vehicle charging station.
Oh.
And so we don't have the signage in yet for it, but that'll be going up quickly. It's a paid parking place. You have to feed the meter from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., just like any other parking space over there. But you can park your electric vehicle and charge.
Where is it exactly? I want to see it.
It's basically, where the awning is in the parking lot across the street. So if you go to the end of the awning, then there's a trash compactor and a cardboard dumpster, and just beyond the cardboard dumpster, you'll see
The side of the oak tree.
there's the new swales they put in the parking lot. It's at the end of one of those
That's
swales,
cool.
closer to the building, in the row that's furthest from Church Street.
So do people, when they're charging, are they paying
Yeah.
for that charge? You said it's metered. Is it metered so that you're paying for the electricity, or metered just like any other parking spot, you're paying for the parking?
You're paying for the parking.
Okay.
The electricity is being basically donated, but the paying for the parking covers the cost of, and then some of the electricity.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it's actually relatively inexpensive
I figured it
to
would be.
charge an electric vehicle.
How long does it take to charge most?
It depends on how depleted your battery is, but with that type of charging station, which is a level 2 charging station, so it has the like special plug. It's a 220 volt plug. If your battery were nearly completely depleted, it'd be 6 to 8 hours to get a charge. If you came in with half full, you'd maybe be looking at 2 to 3 hours on a charge.
I'm assuming you get a ticket if you're not a plug, I mean, just any.
Yeah, so you can get a ticket if you're
not plugging in.
Yeah,
If
I'm
you're
not a
if
efficient
you're not
vehicle.
charging, so even if you're electric vehicle and you're parked there, you need to be charging. Or if you're not an electric vehicle, then yeah, you're definitely getting a ticket.
Yep.
Or if you're, so that'd be like kind of equivalent to parking in a handicap space. If
Right.
you don't have a handicap sign. Or if you run out of meter time. So if you haven't paid for the parking and your meter runs out, you can get a lesser ticket for that.
Did this go in the paper or anywhere? How do people know this?
We're gonna do a
exists?
press release
Okay.
as soon as we get the signage up, and we're gonna get Ozarks Electric up here with their Volt, get a nice picture, and get a press release out. It'll likely be later this week or early next week.
Does the city have an electric car?
We do not. We need to get one though.
It's actually wired out of a SWEPCO box. So
Really?
That's the dirty little secret, yeah.
collegiality is.
Does SWEPCO know this?
Oh, yeah. They know. They're well aware.
They do now.
So yeah, you can start telling your bank customers as well.
Well, what volts and what else can plug into this?
Nissan Leaf, the new Prius is coming in out with a plug-in hybrid. It's a standard level 2 charger. The Tesla, which is the really super expensive electric vehicle, it's the standard. I mean, there's a standard plug that they all have, and this is what that is. Yeah, it won't charge a golf cart, if that's what you're wondering, because that's just a 110 plug.
Or your cell phone.
Yeah, or your cell phone.
Square on his golf cart.
All right, great. Well, I wanted to mention in conjunction with, we talked about doing the home energy rating score for existing homes. The Green Economy Group is raising money right now to fund the greening of the MLS, and they're about $250 short of their goal. And basically what they're paying to do is having a search box put on the MLS listing that you can enter a HERS rating, which is the home energy rating score, so that you could actually search for an energy efficient home. And then there will be other boxes that you can check if you have renewable energy systems, if you have extra insulation, or any other sustainable features in your house. That way it'll help you identify an energy efficient home, or if you're trying to sell one, help you get some value out of those added amenities. So that should be coming soon, and if any people or businesses are interested in contributing, you could talk to me and I can connect you, but they're getting really close to being able to do that.
That's exciting.
All right. So we are down to the other section of our agenda. And I wanted to take this opportunity to remind everyone that tomorrow night the council will be considering the carbon resolution that we voted in support of. And so council members probably would appreciate hearing from you about that. Then we'll also be walking on an agenda item in response to the highway construction. The Highway and Transportation Department is widening 265, and there's been a lot of burning and bulldozing. There's some concerns about the construction processes and their impact to Lake Fayetteville. And so we're going to be asking the Highway Commission, which oversees the AHTD, to provide a little extra oversight on that project and make sure that they are complying with all the regulations that they're supposed to be. So that'll be coming in tomorrow as well. And then as well as the resolution, or the, I'm sorry, the, we're going to authorize the purchase of some police vehicles. And unfortunately, the ones that they've chosen get about 10 miles to the gallon. So something that we need to think about is a sustainable vehicles purchasing policy and see if in the future maybe we can look for some more fuel efficient alternatives.
Yeah, I was curious why they're going to the larger size vehicles. Is it something more that they're having to carry around with them?
I'm not really sure.
Is it about dogs, or is it about hefty prisoners, or more guns? Exactly why are we?
Well, I remember hearing the, Sarah, were you on there when they made that decision?
You can speak to that.
Please
Yes,
ask
please.
her to, yeah.
That was funny, though, Richard, that was funny.
Well, it's kind of funny, but it's sincere.
I mean, it's a sincere question.
The windows are all black, and there's wire, and I'm wondering, what's in there?
So essentially, in the United States, there are only a certain, it blew my mind, because I went into this equipment committee meeting, and I'm Sarah Lewis, and I'm formerly on the city council, and I was on the equipment committee.
Actually, you want to sit up here with the microphone?
Okay. And this is off the cuff, so I hadn't thought about this for a while. So the equipment committee. So there's a need to purchase new vehicles, and they had extended the life of the vehicles, and that's in place still. So that's something also to look at. Is we always ask, do we really need to buy more vehicles? Are the ones we're using, or is there is the maintenance getting to the point where it's not good enough to keep them anymore? So they were needing more vehicles. So they made a presentation of the options. And I was very surprised, because in other parts of the world, they have these tiny little police cars that zip around the little streets and are really efficient. But what I've come to find out is that in the United States, there are only a few companies, Ford and Chevy, and Chrysler, Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler, that have the permission to create and make police fitted vehicles.
Fitted for police pursuit.
And all of the armor on and the content on the inside, and the axle strength, and all of this kind of specs. So, and even within those companies, then there are only the Dodge and the Crown Victoria, which is now out of commission. So it was the Dodge or this Tahoe. Those were the two options. And looking at the Dodge, it got like 1 mile per gallon, or maybe 2 miles per gallon better, but then had worse maintenance issues, because it's so low to the ground that people were knocking the underneath out from under it. And so you end up with the Tahoe that has surprisingly high for a Suburban, actually, miles per gallon, but still not very good at all, but has more room for the officers, which I would say if you ever sit in one of those Dodges, you don't want this. There's a social sustainability issue in that. And so there's also that being able to hop out of a vehicle and go in is also much more feasible within the Tahoe. So this is where we ended up and went round and round, because I had basically to be convinced that why are these our only options? And I think that that's a very valid and still valid question that should still be asked, but just be aware that at the city level there may be constraints in there. But there doesn't mean you can't have a policy that says you're always looking for the more sustainable version and pushing for that. And not just in the efficiency, but the purchasing of the content, the materials, and everything that's a part of that. So that's kind of a little bit of the background that, yes, please ask those questions, but be aware that at a state and federal level, there are these specs that go into police cars that only a few companies build them, and then within those, the options aren't very good as far as the usability, so.
And theoretically, that they could own a few four-wheel drive versions.
Okay, so that, yes.
And if they,
So minimizing the number of four-wheel drives and really asking the question about, do we really need another four-wheel drive, or could we be sharing the four-wheel drive in only specific situations? So that's something that the equipment committee was always really asking and questioning, for sure. So those kinds of criteria that you want the equipment committee to be considering would be really helpful, I think.
and Game and Fish Commission went to four-wheel drive vehicles 20-something years ago. And these, everybody in the woods had a four-wheel drive, but running off and leaving them, disappearing, night hunting and all these kind out in the swamps. And they finally went to it. They argued over it for years. It's too expensive, but they couldn't keep up with competition. And there are places in all our northwest Arkansas cities that a person with four-wheel drive can take off and cut to another highway or something, and you can't do it without it.
Yeah,
So
and
sometimes
the folks in the what's it called, the staff there that work on the cars. Fleet, thank you. They have a whole software that analyzes the vehicles and the amount of time they've been used and the miles and the amount of maintenance they've invested. They're so eloquent in their analysis of that. So building in some of these kinds of things into that, like what are the checks do you want to add to those what kinds of criteria could be built into those little check boxes that should be considered as part of those decisions, I think would be really useful. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
But that's a good example of how, some of our purchases, they aren't sustainable. We do things for certain reasons, and, whether it's getting out of the car or having to carry certain equipment or whatever. And you look at the medical community, there's nothing sustainable about, medical practice. They throw away a tremendous amount of material, but they do it because nobody wants to have that surgical drape that, well, it's still clean, so let's use it again. And 10 miles to the gallon. When I heard that, it kind of outraged me. But I'm glad Sarah kind of educated us a little bit about what went into that decision process. And I don't think miles per gallon matters very much with police cars because they don't ever shut them off anyway. So.
Don't we have an anti-idling policy?
We do.
We try.
It's policy.
We have two of those Tahoes now, correct?
I think we have more than two, yeah.
Really? I thought we had just got a couple of new ones.
Well,
I don't know how many we have.
we ordered 6 the last I knew, and they have 2 before that. So now it sounds like, based on the paper, they're
Yeah.
and getting some more.
We're gonna get some more. And I think it kind of comes down to efficiency versus efficacy, and it's like we put the efficient vehicles where we can, and save the more gas guzzling ones for the applications where they're needed, and
You're gonna have
that's,
more motorcycles to offset.
that's true. But
Yeah.
when we have a flood event or an ice storm and somebody makes a call from the top of Rockwood Trail, we have to be able to get there with our police.
I think that's a really good question to be asking, is where are we using them, how are we allocating use, and question that. That's what I found was really a good conversation at the equipment committee, is helping them, and I say them, the fleet staff, think about how can we organize this differently, and even though we're in the constraints of the state and federal specs, which is strange.
We also have bikes. The police are on bikes on Dixon Street and other places, which is certainly another side of that, which is good. I don't think we have horses, do we? No horses?
I think so.
Okay.
Not that I've seen.
I can't remember.
We should.
Saw them somewhere, but it's not here.
Little Rock has
Horses
Little
are
Rock
not
has
very
horses. I knew,
sustainable.
yeah.
Promise.
Pardon me?
Horses are not very sustainable, I promise.
Oh, sustainable.
Not-
Oh, well, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
They're pretty expensive to take care of.
So, yeah, you could make the points, you could summarize by thinking of a scenario where you get a call, someone's in distress at a house, or there's a fire, or something's wrong. Usually what happens is the fire truck comes, sits outside and idles, and they usually go in first and see what's up. And then the ambulance usually is pretty close behind, and then one or two police vehicles. And so your energy budget is pretty massive right there. But then you're ready to do lots of different kinds of things, which might be necessary.
Right.
So you gotta look at it with that kind of perspective
I
also.
agree.
The social component there.
Yeah,
And there's 7 or 8 people there too.
right. They're
That's
saying
okay.
we're waiting for, oh, sorry, we're waiting for the four-wheel drive. It's out on another call. We'll get back to you. I mean, that doesn't work well, so.
Peter, I have another quick question that's quasi-transportation related, but, or fuel related. Just, you mentioned about the lawnmowers that are using the, is it liquid petroleum? Is that what they're using? Petroleum, what, propane.
Propane.
Petroleum wouldn't work on them.
It's a P word.
One of those P gases. But is it, that was new, they retrofitted some of the mowers in the fall, was that right? And then, so this is the first full season that they're using them?
No, they had them last summer, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Maybe they did the retrofits last summer, but we had them on display at the Sustainability Conference in October up on the square.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think they had just done it then.
maybe you're right.
So is there any kind of update on, how is that? Is it working well? Is it saving on fuel or?
I don't know, but I can.
I'd be interested
find
to
out a
hear
little
about
more.
that.
You'll have to factor in that the grass isn't growing anymore too.
Right, it hasn't rained for a
Same
month.
last year.
So
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's no different from.
It's not a grassy
As long as
summer.
we're not watering it, yep. Probably not growing.
No rain.
And if there are plans to, I don't know if they retrofitted the whole fleet of mowers, or if there are plans to do that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I've seen
I don't think they
trailers with
updated the
5
whole
of
fleet.
them on there.
5
I've seen
mowers.
big trailers with 5 mowers with propane tanks.
Hmm.
So there's several of them.
Quite a few then. I saw them at Gully Park the other day.
I'll find out.
I really enjoy how along the trail they mow around the little wildflowers that are coming up the side of the trail.
That's
I
new
thought
and
that
it's
was-
wonderful to hear.
It's really nice to see that attention. All right, anything else on our other category?
What's another category? Did you talk
Anything
about
else?
this project?
I didn't. Richard brought that.
Richard brought that. Richard, you want to tell? Richard has sent me, he gives me commands to go out on things because he sees places I haven't seen, so this is your baby.
Sarah, you know about this one? We did a
flyover?
site visit
No.
last year. I sat down
Oh,
with Sarah.
with Mullins, the stream restoration?
No, this is the convention center out by the Holiday Inn Express.
Oh, yeah, okay, it was a tree preservation area that went,
That, as far
Well,
as I
they-
can tell, all got bulldozed up in a pile and burnt.
well, yeah, it was, so that was passed. So there was a tree preservation area that the variance was given for that to be changed in trade, and this is what needs to be watched, is in exchange for implementing the low impact development ordinance and capturing runoff from a neighboring property, and then reestablishing the same amount of trees that were cut. So that's what the end result was of that. So have they started then?
Oh, it's,
I drove past it today and there's a great big sign up there. It says topsoil for sale.
Okay.
And it's all stripped bare.
yeah,
Well,
it,
it's actually been replaced by red dirt.
By what?
red dirt.
Red dirt.
Oh, red dirt.
If I may, I have several hundred pictures before, after, and during on Flickr
Yeah.
in a whole bunch of categories. Main one is what? Urban infill threatens watershed. In this case, the Illinois River watershed. But all the trees were taken off. I went out there the day before. Richard had alerted me, and I asked these workers. The trees were still there. There was 3 patches down at the lower end, and it was the lowest corner of the property, right where the water all goes naturally, and then into the what's the stream? Hamstring. And so it was a no-brainer that all you have to do is leave that soil and those trees in that corner. You don't have to do anything. You let it run off naturally there, and it soaks in like it always did.
They asked for and got a variance. So the thing to watch now is, will they do the rest of the story, which is to establish another water collection regime and plant trees and support it?
Well, they've got that in their plan, but it will be non-natural rain gardens created to make up for natural rain garden that would actually do the work of recharging the groundwater in many cases as well. I mean, subsurface water as well as the groundwater going into the stream. So it just costs them more, and that's what it takes to convince them to use low impact development practices.
Well,
The soil stripped off had no rock in it. I've got video clips on YouTube from the same thing, and they were just taking it and, piling it up to haul off.
Essentially created an aquitard, a 2 to 3 foot thick boon regolith aquitard, to use fancy terms.
Yeah, geologist. Yeah.
Well, it was real light sandy soil, and water would pass through it in just the way you would like.
Yeah.
But they're building a building there in a parking lot now. So.
It's Jorgensen, and they would come and present.
Oh, well, that would be good.
And you could ask them questions about it.
Yeah, that
That's
would
the
be good.
developer?
That's the engineer.
I think that would be a good way to learn a lot of things, is to have some people
The
come in and
last,
talk to us.
that's who brought it forward, unless it's sold and went to another.
Okay.
There was another session out at the corner of, was it Rupel and Weddington?
Yeah, Richard sent me out to see the Walgreens store property. And they did set aside some timber that they bought, part of the land adjacent to where they actually built. But they scraped it out real deep, and it was all, wonderful soil that any farmer would like to have.
Well, it's unsuitable for construction.
Yes, it is, apparently. But the old folks built on those things, and the houses are still standing, and some of them blow down before they build out. Anyway, off that horse.
That, by the way, those trees were sawed into appropriate lengths, and all the brush and trees were piled up and burned on site.
Has that been burned on Walgreens already?
Oh, yeah, it was burned in 2 days.
Yeah, well, they were burning them out there at the, near the Holiday Inn. I don't know what the new hotel is gonna be called that they're building, but, yeah, that was pretty disappointing. The one, if I may, that I went to photograph today and have some photographs, is if anybody wanted to see them, but they're online too, will be. The highway department, we've known what it was doing on 15th Street, going into Happy Hollow, and going out there and taking photos from different angles and seeing the native plants they're taking out and burying under the dirt they've dug out of the street where they put tunnel under to put a big culvert. I also talked to some men that were driving by and said, well, what you doing? And I said, well, I'm taking pictures of this culvert that's coming out from under there that's going to be a real big thing, and it's just a little ditch over here. And he said, yeah, I talked to them about they ought to get that water through a bigger route somewhere so it doesn't go through all our driveways and wash them out and get in our houses. All these people live across the street. They get east of Happy Hollow there, back down in a savanna. It's lower than the highway. They raised the highway 4 feet minimum on much of 15th Street portion, and it's raised even higher as it goes up Happy Hollow. So that's going to be more street runoff and more piped water, so it goes faster through there. This is the opposite of low impact development. It's highway department doing it. But I can show you examples of the city's work still being, ignoring low impact practices in many areas. So it's very disappointing that we have all these things we were talking about earlier to, you know, make it possible, give some guidance to people. But there's still not a way to see that before a person buys property, they know what limitations are there. They know it's wetland. They know it's got excellent timber. It's prairie that would not need a fake rain garden. You could use 1/3 of it or 1/4 or a tiny amount sometimes if you just take the water there. And it's not a requirement that they use low impact development. I don't know why we can't get that passed in this Sarah's term. We tried, got the first part in this Sarah's term. So,
Well, I'm aiming for some incentives, so
Well,
we can at
incentives.
least get that.
the first incentive is so many ways is you don't run those big caterpillars so much in the process, and you save a lot of money. But the architect has to draw it, so
It's
you
the
don't go
engineer.
over here. The engineer and the architect cooperating, I would say. Yeah, you didn't want to be blamed.
It's the engineer.
But I mean, yes, the people who plan it have to say, this is set aside. These trees are set aside. These things, you don't go under there and build a parking lot under the overhang of the trees and say, oh, we saved them. Now, the other one so we totally failed on that effort, on this one we just talked about. We did have some success at the Planning Commission in the recent 2 or 3 months on a compromise was arrived at on the 15th Street and Razorback Road, former Prairie, across from Baum Stadium. And the compromise included having some of the native plants that are growing, and you can still see them right now, milkweed and Baptisia alba, white wild indigo, and a whole bunch of other things that aren't as spectacular showing. But that will have, what's her name? The stream restaurant.
Oh, Sandy.
Sandy Formica and her crew will do some stream restoration. And the Planning Commission at the end of the 24th meeting voted to add that requirement that they retain and utilize native plants from the site in that process. So these are things that are not rare, but they're getting rare in this city fast because they keep being exactly where developers want to work. So I was proud that we've made that effort.
So that's a city thing.
That's a city
Okay,
thing,
good.
yeah, a city requirement that they do what, but they got their variance. They're still too close. They kept moving it back a little bit at a time and adjusting, and they went along with that, and so, okay, so it's palatable compared to what
Well,
it
Can I
could
say
be.
one thing about that? That's exactly the intent of the Streamside Protection Ordinance, is to have that conversation. Now, if there's a need to then go further in the next phase, but the fact that that conversation even happened is really a big deal.
It wouldn't have happened
And
without
there
that
was
ordinance.
progress, right,
That's
so,
exactly right.
I think that, of course, there's consideration, okay, in the future, do we wanna make that wider, or there are more strict, less ability to have a variance, but, I'm so happy to hear that the conversation happened, and there's an opportunity to have that kind of negotiation. Right.
And that, the variance was to accommodate their parking, that's correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so, something that we might want to look at is our parking minimums and maybe eliminating our minimum parking requirement. And let developers decide how much parking they really need rather than the city telling them how much they have to have.
That's a good point.
So-
I've been noticing some alternative paving being installed over here near the downtown parking lots. It's some kind of a squarish grid material. Peter, you know anything about that stuff?
Basically pervious paving or permeable paving.
So there might be a
I
little
don't know.
grass growing up through it one of these days?
Yeah, you're talking down here on Church Street, the redevelopment,
Mhm.
behind the, or across from the city lot. Yeah, I don't know what the name of that particular material is called, but I've worked with other types in the past that either have gravel that goes in those void spaces and no vegetation, or there's some for lighter use areas that have grass growing in them. Then they have the structural strength to support
So,
vehicles.
in this case, did that developer get some benefit from proposing to use that sort of thing?
I don't know the specific details about that project, but I do know that it's a consideration for low-impact development as part of our, at least the way the draft rules read for the city of Fayetteville. It also is a consideration for credits when someone is building and trying to get certified for a LEED building under their sustainable sites criteria. So again, I don't know if they were going after either of those for that particular project, but there are incentives
Just as
for that type of work.
interesting observation, since I got to notice it every day. They brought these sheets of this pervious material, and if you want to visualize squares of concrete with some kind of thing holding the whole grid
Like
together.
a wire mat or something like that, holding it all together.
But the interesting thing to me was that they brought that stuff in early in the game. While they were still doing ditches and things, but they threw that stuff down and vehicles were over it, and it was okay, it wasn't regular and perfect, but it was a way to keep from getting your feet sticky during the meantime. And then after they got the building developed and everything slicked up and the windows clean and everything, they pulled it all back and they raked and scratched around and got it, took a little small tractor in there and graded it all out nice and relaid it.
May have also been an effort to keep from over compacting the subgrade so that it would still have some permeability to it.
So that was, to me, that was really interesting to see the alternative in action, because I've been around a lot of job sites, and they get really messy.
Yeah.
You track it out on the streets and stuff, but this stuff is reusable in that way. So I thought it was a good thing to see.
Yeah. I noticed them out today raking the soil into the void spaces.
So Aubrey, you'll get to see something growing there. It's not gonna be,
Probably won't be
it's
milkweed.
not gonna be
No, it's not gonna
blue stem or milkweed.
We'll
but
put
it'll
some
be
little blue stem seed in there
Yeah.
when they're not
some
looking.
kind of something green and alive, maybe.
Yeah.
But the other point, whether it does that or not, is that it's pervious. And
That's
that's
the main
the place where we're trying to get with things we do.
The water goes down instead of running off.
And that was part of the 15th Street project, that they required some pervious pavement in there. So maybe it's the same thing they're gonna use. Hope.
All right, do we have anything else, or are we done for the evening?
Nothing from the university, or?
No, university is wrapping up its construction, and we're all thinking it's about time.
I have one question for
Mhm.
Connie. I forget who we had been talking about.
Sandy Formica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Is
she's coming.
She's
Yeah,
on
I
the
think
agenda
I-
for next
yeah,
month?
yeah,
Okay, I just
she
wanted to
is.
double check that.
Yeah,
All right.
They're sisters, by the way.
Oh,
If you didn't know it, I don't know why I can't think of Sandy's
I
name.
don't, you know, I try to
their
keep
dad so
my
well.
personal and professional separate, but that doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
All right, did we have any comments from the public? Input? All right, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming this evening, and I'll see you next month, if not sooner.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.